Hey guys, welcome to That Florida Feeling. How's everybody doing? I hope everybody's having a good week. I want to let you guys know I'm so appreciative and thankful of you guys. I would not have this podcast if it was not for you. So thank you so much. I truly mean it. I appreciate every share, every comment, every like, because it lets me know that you guys want to see this stuff, and it lets me know that I'm not just talking to myself, even though it feels like it. So thank you. I told you guys I'm going to have surgery. It's still a thing. But I went ahead and recorded this episode so that I would have something for you guys at a later time. So, hope you guys enjoyed last week's episode. Today we're going to talk about a place in Florida that is kind of up for debate at the moment. It also kind of can't decide where it needs to be. And that is Marineland. Now, Marineland is actually a town in Florida. It was established in 1940, and it's in both Flagler and St. Johns counties. So think right past St. Augustine, actually about 19 miles south of St. Augustine. As of 2020, though, the population was a whopping 15. Huge town, let me tell you. But Marineland actually got its start because a Marineland Dolphin Adventure opened on June 23rd, 1938 as Marine Studios, a facility designed for Hollywood filmmakers to create underwater footage of motion pictures and newsreels, popularly known as the world's first oceanarium. Marine Studios was actually a premier destination to actually allow people to see marine life up close as well. So this is a completely new thing, and it was supposed to kind of be for Hollywood, but people can come see it, and we're just going to hope this works. And it was officially incorporated into a municipality in 1940. The little towns around kind of grouped around Marineland. And the town of Marineland has actually become kind of a hub of research and conservation. And it does sit in the middle of the Guantanamo Matanzas National Estuarine Research Reserve. I'm not saying it again. So local businesses and foundations have a really good working relationship with the different Marines around there and the different eco tours. I know a couple of them are Ripple Effect Eco Tours, Marineland Marina, Marineland Dolphin Adventure, the Whitney Laboratory for Bioscience, which is part of UF. There's the Florida Master Naturalist Program, and then Washington Oaks Garden State Park is actually not far from it, and neither is Faber Dykes State Park. Washington Oaks is actually so close to it. I went to both in one day. But yeah, it's only a town of about 0.27 square miles in all. Not even a mile. Not a mile. Not even barely a quarter of a mile. But it sits really close to St. Augustine and Palm Coast, that it's somehow still a town. Like I said, in 2000, there were a whopping 6 people, 3 households in the town. That's it. I don't know. And it's 100% white. Yeah. So, it's a town on the move. But it's not that great because, you know, they only make about $37,000 a year. Somehow this town does not classify to the poverty line. Okay. So, how has Marineland stayed Marineland? Well, let's talk about that first thing I mentioned. Marineland of Florida, or as we call it, Marineland. And it was one of Florida's first marine mammal parks, billed as the world's first oceanarium. It kind of functioned as an entertainment, swim with the dolphins, big aquarium kind of thing. And when they very first opened in 1938, admission was $1. $1. It's had some ups and downs. It has. It really has. But Marineland was first conceived by W. Douglas Burden, Cornelius Vanderbilt Whitney, Sherman Pratt, and Ilya Andreevich Tolstoy. Yes, the grandson of Leo Tolstoy. And they wanted to have an oceanarium that could be used to film marine life. So they picked a site on the Atlantic Ocean south of St. Augustine, and the reason for that is because most of them hung out in St. Augustine, thanks to Flagler. And it became the town of Marineland. The site of Marineland is within a 20,000 acre grant given to Sorry, my cat is losing his mind. To London barrister Levitt Blackburn in 1767. The well-connected Blackburn, grandson of Sir Richard Levitt, Lord Mayor of London, never actually settled the grant nor even came to Florida. Not shocking. And eventually, Blackburn's plantation was re-granted to John Graham, a Georgia loyalist fleeing the Revolutionary War. But ultimately, it's now Marineland. Financing and construction obviously presented challenges, as this was the first time anybody had ever really attempted to capture and sustain marine life anywhere in a big tank. But they overcame them. Marine Studios officially opened on June 23rd, 1938, and began to operate with its main attraction of bottlenose dolphins. Somehow, they got 20,000 tourists to clog Highway A1A just to visit the new attraction in the first year. And for decades, it actually was a really good spot to go visit because it was Marineland, motels. There's actually a couple motels. There's Marine Village Court, Marineland Motel, and a Quality Inn. There was a couple restaurants, the Dolphin Restaurant and Moby Dick Lounge, the Periwinkle Snack Bar, and the Sandpiper Snack Bar. You have to keep it in, theme. There was actually a marina, Marineland Marina, a fruit shop, a gift shop, which is not surprising for Florida, and a pier. They also had a Texaco service station, and a Greyhound bus line actually stopped in this spot to run as it's part of its run from St. Augustine to Daytona. The total property at that time consisted of 125 acres that were between the Atlantic Ocean and the Intercoastal Waterway. This was actually planned for St. Augustine residents as a way to move there, like extra space. But the residents really didn't like it. They didn't like the attraction being located there. So that's why they didn't choose St. Augustine. They wanted it to be in St. Augustine. They wanted it to be next to it. They wanted to have space to grow this. And they thought, oh, St. Augustine, we can still grow this. And the people were like, no, we don't want that. Sounds like a lot of Florida today. And that's why they ended up south of the Matanzas Inlet. Kind of close to Fort Matanzas, actually. It was also said that Cornelius Vanderbilt Whitney chose the upper coast of Florida due to the less frequent occurrences of hurricanes compared to any other part of Florida. He's still kind of not wrong, honestly. Now, there were huge tanks that were put in, two main ones, as the centerpiece for Marine Studios, or as they were known, oceanariums. Visitors could enter and see a circular oceanarium to the south, which was obviously nicknamed the Cirque Tank by the staff. And that was really home to dolphins, maybe some groupers, definitely some pelicans. And the circular oceanarium actually held about 400,000 gallons of water, which is insane for that time. It was 12 feet deep, 80 feet across, had some rocks laid on a sandy bottom. And then there was another tank, the Rec Tank, obviously it's rectangular, held 450,000 gallons. And that was assortment of local and tropical fish, sharks, eels, turtles, and other marine life that it would hold. It was 100 feet long, 40 feet wide, and required cables to hold the structural integrity of the tank at the time. So, tells you how far aquariums have come. The rectangular aquarium was the largest of the Marine Studios tanks. It had two 12-foot deep sections. Those were the largest at the northern and southern third ends. So the middle was a little more shallow. The middle was actually deeper. Sorry, that was the shallow. The middle was actually 18 feet. The rectangular oceanarium was actually heated with an oil-fired furnace below the deck to heat the tank during the cooler months to protect all tropical fish. So at least they took that into account. And then the two oceanariums were actually connected by a flume, which was a shallow waterway between the two tanks. The flume was gated to keep specimens in their respective tanks and the water to be able to flow through the tanks as well. They also would use the flume to transport large animals to transport vehicles if needed, and a large crane just in case. Of course, below deck they had huge corridors, and then the two ocean aquariums have portholes into the tanks where you could actually see the fish. So that people could walk down below and see the fish, which is kind of cool. Like, that's kind of at its time. And, you know, this was like a great thing back then. When visitors came in, they would be able to see a biological station, a front ticket office, announcer's booth, and many other displays, including a slab of coquina at the entrance of Marineland. They would have also come under an arch that stood above a large slab of coquina, which had the words Marine Studios 1938. And then walk past the Fudge Kitchen. It's called the Fudge Kitchen. To a ticket office where they could observe from the top decks or wander down below. The Porpoise Stadium is a show tank that they had at the time, and held tanks along with bleachers. It was not added, though, until 1952. But the park continued to expand from 1938, and they would showcase Flippy. Flippy was an educated porpoise. Dolphins were known locally as porpoises, even though porpoise is actually a different type of animal. So they're probably talking about dolphins. And the reason was to not... Okay, so it actually gives me a reason. I forgot. I'd written this out very shorthanded. The reason that they did not call it a dolphin is because they didn't want to confuse the dolphin fish as well as a widely used local slang at that time. Could not find the slang, probably don't want to know it. They eventually added a roof to the stadium in 1961 and continued to expand. They also, in 1961, started to use Marineland as opposed to Marine Studios for marketing reasons, which I think Marineland sounds a lot better than in marketing. You can also make it prettier, but Marine Studios, you don't really think of like an oceanarium in that. They continued to grow a lot through the 60s. Eventually in the 1980s, they would kind of go more towards conservation, or they had been going towards conservation in the 80s. But in the 80s, they would become the wonders of the spring, and they would actually showcase freshwater fish found in Florida Springs. So now they're bringing in all kinds of aquatics and marine life. And so that's kind of cool. But they did continue their conservation. They also used freshwater displays for other reasons. They did even have freshwater dolphins and manatees at one time. Then they converted it into a shark tank for smaller sharks, a shark nursery. Kind of the same thing. The shallow tank actually saw several functions. It held dolphins. Then they became a sea lion display where they added a show in the 1980s. So this is another small tank. And even though the park it's now was Marineland, the name Marine Studios would stick around some time, and the studio department, which managed most of the park, would actually not end until 1987. Now, you're probably thinking, this is a lot of salt water. This is a lot. So how did they get there? The salt water for the tanks and oceanariums was actually brought in by a set of pipes that ran under the sand out into the ocean. We're sitting right there. Let's just get it ourselves. 2 pump stations called galleries would pump the water from the plant through the filtration, and then the seawater was circulated through the oceanariums and back out into the intercoastal. They dedicated a team to run and to maintain these pipes for 24 hours a day, knowing that if something happened, it would be very bad. Water was treated by copper sulfate to help reduce algae growth, and they would be monitored. It was actually kind of groundbreaking. Kind of a couple different groundbreaking discoveries due to how they would do things in Marineland. So it's really great that not only did they give people a chance to see marine life, they conserved, and they made all these great, interesting discoveries that we probably still use to this day. And of course, having certain people involved in the project did make it a little more desirable, especially Leo Tolstoy's grandson. So it became a very must-go place in its early days. Writer Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings, John Dos Passos, and Ernest Hemingway actually all went and even visited Moby Dick's bar. Miss Rawlings was actually married to Norton Baskin at that time, who was the operator and owner, or operator and manager of the Dolphin Restaurant and Moby Dick Lounge. That's a very interesting tie-in. The park's facilities were popular with tourists and even used for filming numerous movies. Two of the most are Creature from the Black Lagoon and Revenge of the Creature, 1954 and 1955, respectively. The world's first dolphin trainer, Adolf Frahn, actually started training dolphins and developed dolphin shows, which even became an additional draw in the early 1950s. So after it started, tourists were coming, and now they had another reason to come. And this became one of Florida's major attractions, not just roadside attractions, but like major attractions. They hit almost 1 million visitors in the mid-1970s, which is insane. Further expansion continued to move on. They added more sandbars, more gift shops, even a shell museum, and an Aquarius 3D theater. It's kind of cool that, they started small and they realized this is a good thing, but instead of just expanding, they took their time. Apparently, though, at one point, they had a hippopotamus exhibit. It was west of the duck pond. They never fully opened it to the public. I guess that they had some issues with it, but there was going to be a hippopotamus exhibit. Like it existed. It just never made it. The University of Florida lab actually ended up being added along with the halls and dorms in the mid-1970s, dubbed Whitney Hall. And that's actually where, people would start to study and stay. And then the Marineland employees kind of use it as an annual Christmas party, which kind of became a tradition. And it's really cool. They also allowed divers to get in the pools and do things. Divers using the Miller-Dunn style 3 diving hood helmet would feed fish, eels, turtles, and dolphins by hand. And then trainers would conduct a dolphin show at least 6 times a day. Announcers would always let the people know as soon as there was anything happening and ring a bell. And so it's really cool that they really made this awesome. Back then it really was truly great. Now, one of the first shows they started really was in the 1950s, and they used a platform. And then in the early 1970s, they actually purchased a Skyworker unit, which was basically a movable bucket. Just think of something you would see on a utility truck if someone was working on power lines up top. And so that's really cool that they purchased this, but they changed it to their needs. They used it upside down. And so that really meant that they could kind of move it in a different way, which is really, really cool. Another innovation that Marineland had. And they made sure that it was harmless to the dolphins because the Skyworker worked on vegetable oil, not anything that would be harmful. And when they would move it around, the dolphins would then leap up 16 feet into the air. I would definitely have wanted to see that. And I'm not one for, I don't like SeaWorld. Don't get me wrong. I don't like SeaWorld. I hate the dolphin shows. I hate last time we were there, they were standing on the dolphins. Do not stand on a dolphin. So it's really cool that all they really did was have them jump up. I like that. And of course, they had continuous diving shows where the people would go down and walk around and feed the crowd, feed the marine life in front of the crowds. So I mean, they really got into it, and it was such a really cool area. At one point, Marineland was actually the largest employer in Flagler County. They had over 300 employees. Of course, they had other exhibits that complemented the shows, like Wonders of the Sea, which was a close-up of marine specimens in aquariums, electric eel demonstrations. They had a penguin. Flamingo displays, and it's, it was really cool that between the shows that people could just walk around and enjoy. They could even play catch using a basketball with a dolphin on one of the decks. Now, the other thing that Marineland had that was really cool was not only could they pump the water in from the ocean, but they had a freshwater system. They operated a reverse osmosis water plant that actually converted the salt to fresh water. And basically, it supplied the entire plant and subsequent expansions, as well as wastewater treatment. The treated wastewater was sprayed by a huge sprayer called Rainbird, which was located behind the electric eel exhibits. And the reason that they did this is because they were so far away from really like St. Augustine or Palm Coast that they had to make their own. And they knew that. So they did it, and they had a huge backup power generator just in case. They had 24-hour-a-day people looking at this, a pump man on duty to be able to restart the tanks or the pumps at any moment. And so it was really great to see that they took all this into account when they were creating this massive oceanarium. So I think it's really cool. And for a long time, Marineland did really, really well. And it attracted as many as 400,000 visitors annually, with its largest being in the mid-70s, and that's almost 1 million. But of course, something opened. Something opened in 1971. And in 1973, that would be Disney World and SeaWorld in Orlando. And Marineland didn't die. It just went down to about 20 to 25,000 people a year, which is a far cry from its glory days. And of course, as it declined, Cornelius Vanderbilt Whitney, who was the major stockholder of the private company that owned Marineland, opted to sell the marine park in 1983 to a group of St. Augustine businessmen during the summer of that year. The new investors brought some ideas into the park, and some did not work. Some did work. Some helped the park. And for a while, the park actually held its own with fair attendance in the busier summer months, and then keeping ongoing traditional shows, seasonal high dives, and other entertainment that really helped out keep it kind of relevant. They also changed kind of the times and the orders which they would do the shows. And so that way people would know it would be better for them. And so like Marineland is trying to change with the times in the 80s. They are. And then a few years they did a 4th of July event that held fireworks on the beach. It was well attended by locals. And it lasted for a good 10 years from the mid 80s to the mid 90s. But they were still actually expanding. They made a campground. They actually made a campground affiliated with Jellystone brand, and it was built on the southwest side of the property. The campground was equipped with a ranger station and a gas station and a small store. And that actually kind of brought attendance back up a little bit. Just a little bit. And, it did make them relevant. It did keep them relevant. Marineland did not carry the Marine Studios name anymore. The modernization also retired one of the dive hood helmets and went to regular scuba gear. The last time they actually used that dive helmet where the person was in that suit and the person up top had the hose was early November of 1987. Older nautical themed uniforms were replaced, staff were moved around, shows and items were changed. And that actually brought about not happiness. People didn't like it. You know, they wanted their nostalgia. They wanted their old Marineland back. And of course, in the 1990s, this is really when increased government inspections started. New regulatory requirements were difficult to meet because of things like SeaWorld and other aquariums and, they really animal welfare. And there were some hard years between 99 and 2005. There was a lot of hurricanes in Florida, especially 2004 alone. And unfortunately, that really just kind of decided that it wasn't worth for Marineland anymore. The buyer who bought it when they sold it, because it just went bankrupt, was actually going to build timeshare condominiums, but couldn't finalize the plans. And that actually resulted in bankruptcy for the buyers. And then in addition to the already strapped oceanarium, it had already been refigured into a nonprofit foundation. And so it was still around, but not around. They couldn't even pay for their own repairs. They were trying, people were trying. People donated materials from around to try to get this to help the employees keep the place going. Like, the place didn't shut down, but it shut down as far as Marineland as you know it. They even ended up selling a lot of their dolphins to SeaWorld Orlando. But everything has a rebirth. Of course, as we know, Hurricanes Floyd and Irene in 99 forced the park to close for 2 months. Damage was really bad right up in that area. But they prevailed, and then through 2004, including the iconic Marineland sign. But they kept going. They renovated the original 1938 circular oceanarium and the rectangular oceanarium. And the 1952 stands and tanks were demolished. They were not going to be repaired. They kept the main 2 old ones. The old lab was demolished. And then large new tanks, which contained over 485,000 gallons of water, were constructed as part of where Whitney Park once stood. Like, they made major changes to Marineland to try to keep it going. Like, someone knew it wanted to be saved, and they wanted to save it. So, the location where the original oceanariums once stood is not what you think it is now. Those tanks were gone. They tried to save them. They did save them. They didn't save them for long, and they had to demolish them. So they have that one large 485,000 gallon tank. And then they included modern buildings, a pumping station, other equipment, small museums that actually paid homage to old Marineland. The location where the original oceanariums once stood ended up as a parking lot, unfortunately. The old main entrance, walkway, gift shop were preserved. Actually, the only original structures left on the east side of A1A. And everything was repurposed. They have tanks that were repurposed for sharks and rehabbing sea turtles. And so they really knew that they needed to save this, but they needed to do it drastically. The park would no longer hold dolphin shows, and it really reopened more as an educational, hands-on environmental facility that called itself Marineland Dolphin Adventure, which means that guests can interact now with dolphins directly and see other marine life. There was tentative plans to build condos around it. I even remember that years ago. It never happened, or it hasn't happened yet. The former Marineland of Florida administration, though, was also saved and repurposed. It is now offices for Whitney Laboratories. A new marina was built along the Intercoastal Waterway. And the rest of Marineland property, including lands where the hotel and campground once served, became the property of Flagler County and make up the River to Sea Preserve, one of the county's parks, which is actually a very beautiful park. With the gift of Cornelius Vanderbilt Whitney of slightly more than 3 acres of land, together with his donation of about half the construction cost, on January 1930, 1974, the University of Florida did end up opening the Whitney Marine Laboratory adjacent to Marineland. It is still kind of ongoing there today. The original Whitney Hall, unfortunately, was demolished. So, it's time to go out with the old and in with the new. Now, on January 1st, 2011, Georgia Aquarium actually purchased Marineland in Florida for $9.1 million. In 2019, the park was sold anew to Dolphin Discovery Group, which I guess currently owns it, kind of. The facility, now named Marineland Dolphin Adventure, offers dolphin encounters, but unfortunately on March 31st of 2025, the Dolphin Company, the current owner of Marineland, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Yeah, and they got a protection to deal with the debts and financial challenges of running Marineland. Now, Marineland has done a lot for conservation. In fact, 3 bottlenose dolphins, Tomo, Aki, and Tokai, were born at the newly constructed Dolphin Conservation Center in July of 2008. The 2 males actually died, though, unfortunately, of traumatic injuries in 2018 and 2021. What the hell? Sorry. So they do conservation. They have had animals born there and lived there. Apparently die there. But the question remains, is Marineland still a place you'd go today? I would. It's on the U.S. National Register of Historic Places. It still has a working website where you can go to. But unfortunately, like, Marineland has just encountered a lot. It is expensive to keep up. Think of them as large aquariums. This is just one of those sad parts of it. And Marineland's future is kind of still unclear today. The last thing that was published was in August of 2025. Despite Marineland's parent company bankruptcy, they have actually put Marineland up for sale. It is still open, but you can buy it. It does still straddle Flagler and St. Johns counties. It is operational, taking online reservations for tours and interactive dolphin programs. But the future is kind of a day at a time, unfortunately. And the park is kind of being marketed as a sold as is kind of deal. They're just kind of waiting to see what happens. There is no asking price, although it's been assessed for about $4.5 million. But it can be rezoned for commercial and tourist. But of course, many people like I do wonder what's going to happen to the dolphins and the sea creatures. The Dolphin Company, who's its parent, does not have a great reputation in animal welfare. And the reason I say that is because the sister park is Gulf World Marine Park in Panama City. And over 8 months, 5 dolphins died. It's closed now, by the way, the one in Panama City, as it should be. So, do we know how long Marineland's going to be around for? No. Does it have an amazing history? Absolutely. Absolutely. They still do great work. They still run a marine rescue. And they work alongside the Whitney Laboratory for Marine Sciences. And, it's sad to see this once amazing, great place who actually made huge leaps and bounds be in a sad, sad state. If you want to visit Marineland, you can. They do have an active website. It's marineland.net. They have programs that pretty much run 8:30 to 3 p.m. every day. Looks kind of interesting. And judging by the layout of their thing, they only really have the dolphin tank anymore. So, but how much is Marineland? Let's look. $20. Okay. A lot less than I thought it was going to be. It is $20 per person. Children 2 and under are free. If you have a mower more than 15, it's $12 per person. You can still swim with the dolphins. Yeah, you can swim with them. I don't like that. I don't. But if you want to swim with them, it's $205. And the reason I don't like it is because they're dolphins. Leave them alone. There is also a food truck. They're trying to make this place work. Their food truck's actually kind of extensive. I'd totally eat some loaded nachos or some chicken tenders. And it really is just sad to see this great Florida roadside attraction that almost had 1 million visitors now go kind of to the wayside. Just think of all the people that pass through there. People who are future marine biologists, people who are future teachers, tourists, memories that people won't, have anymore, or that's the one great memory they have of Florida. I'm also sure Florida Man passed through those gates. I'm sure of it. But I'm glad it wasn't the Florida Man we're going to talk about today. Florida Man caught on body cam video swinging a machete at a police officer in Walmart. And if you're wondering where this Florida Man is, he is in Fort Pierce, Florida, y'all. He was arrested after swinging a machete at a Fort Pierce police officer inside a Walmart along Okeechobee Boulevard. They arrested Lawrence Fountain, who is 33, on multiple charges, including aggravated battery on a law enforcement officer, resisting arrest with violence, disturbing peace, and petty theft. They responded to the Walmart around 9 p.m. on August 30th after receiving multiple 911 calls that a man was walking through the store with a machete. Numerous people were seen leaving the store in a panic as officers arrived at the scene. Witnesses were seen on body cam footage identifying the suspect, who was actually at the store's exit leaving. He was pushing a shopping cart with the machete placed in its upper compartment. They tried to detain him. He grabbed it and swung violently. He was tased. Yep. Police department learned after the incident employees and customers were actually fearful, which I could understand. And the officer who the suspect swung at did actually get cut. So, I don't know that I would ever want to see a man walking through Walmart with a machete. But I have stories about that Walmart. I used to live near that Walmart. And when the liquor store opens around 8 a.m. and people were outside waiting, and you never knew what you were going to get, like you would be inside Walmart shopping, and you'd have people walk up, hey, can I sell you this? I'm in a Walmart, man. I'm already buying stuff. Go away. You never really knew what you were going to encounter. So, maybe avoid Fort Pierce Walmart on Okeechobee Boulevard after dark. Just saying. I do hope that you guys enjoyed hearing about Marineland, and it's hopefully got a future. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you're enjoying or will enjoy the guest host. I don't know where this is going to fall when I do this. But thank you so much for listening. I do appreciate it. I will be back soon. Any shares, likes, comments really do help the podcast more than you know. So thank you. Thank you to everyone. Be nice to one another, guys. There's a lot of crap going on in the world, and don't add to it. It's still hurricane season. Be prepared. Drink your water, wear your sunscreen, and as always, guys, that's your daily dose of sunshine.
This podcast is a production of Unfiltered Studios. If you would like to know more about joining Unfiltered Studios, please visit our website at unfpod.com for more information.